G'day there. This morning I was listening to a podcast and it was discussing the issue of copyright in relation to generative AI. Now, the point was made that anything produced by generative AI cannot be copyrighted. It's certainly the case in the US where the podcast originated from, and it's not effectively owned by anybody, therefore. Now, the interesting point that I found was that the podcaster was also mentioning how the lawyers and legal firms around the place are arguing that organisations should be responsible for any content generated by AI within their organisation. Now, I find this somewhat strange. Now, I don't have any legal qualifications, but I really question how an organisation can be held responsible for something that they don't own. It seems that it must come down to the user rather than the copyright. So, despite the generated content allegedly being at fault, it is supposed to be the person who disseminated that information who will be held responsible. So, to provide an analogy here, let's have a look at a situation whereas if I gave you a gift of a lithium battery and a charger and it sets fire to your house, do I get held responsible for that? Surely not. Surely it is the manufacturer of the product. So if we follow the same line of reasoning, then the company that generated the content, be it OpenAI, Anthropic, or anybody else for that matter, not the user, would be responsible. So wouldn't that be the case? Now, personally, I dislike with considerable intensity all of these arguments where, as a society, we're always looking for someone to blame. However, it's an entire industry and economy to itself. There are always legal experts that can be engaged on both sides of an argument, which makes the entire system a bit of a farce. Well, to cynical me anyway. Now, if anyone could provide clarity on this matter, it would be appreciated. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now, I understand the relationship between an organisation and its responsibility for work done by employees. For example, if an employee repairs a car or some machinery, the organisation may be held liable for damages if the work is not completed properly. Now, in this case, there's a direct relationship between the organisation, the employee's contracted work, and the responsibility towards the customer in return for payment. So let's consider a scenario where an organisation has employees using generative AI without their knowledge. In this case, the content produced is not technically owned by the organisation since it cannot be copyrighted or owned by anyone. So who is responsible? Is the employee responsible for being deceitful and passing off the work of generative AI as their own? If the organisation lacks a generative AI policy, are they considered negligent for not providing adequate training to their employee? And while we're on the matter of legality, it is my understanding that if I put something on YouTube, Facebook, or here for that matter, in an article, that I own the copyright and provide the platform with permission to use it. Now, the drafting of this entire article for the purposes of this video raised so many questions for me that I decided to ask somebody who knows far more than I. So I gave ChatGPT a prompt. Now, here is the prompt that was ideated from my thought processes. So I said to OpenAI, and there will be a link to all of this in the show notes at the bottom, but I said to AI, I'm continuing to expand on my article and I have a question. I understand you are not a lawyer, but I wish to propose a scenario. So then I asked ChatGPT, by the way, if I create a video for YouTube or an article for Medium, my understanding is that I own the copyright. If an AI company scrapes that content from the web and uses it to train their AI model, is that not questionable? If we take the case of media outlets striking license agreements with AI companies for using their content, then it is interesting that they are not passing on a portion of this to the journalist who wrote the content, despite the fact that they own it. the additional revenue being generated was unforeseen and therefore not included in the journalist's salary package. Now, that's the end of the prompt that I gave to GPT-4, but it was prompted to some extent, no pun intended, to some extent by the fact that if an AI company is scraping data from YouTube, Medium, or anywhere else where I put my content, and they negotiate a license fee with the AI company for provision of the content for training data, what about me? Like, I'm the one who provided it in the first place, and it seems that I'm missing out. I'm not really worried about that, but I like some clarity around it because I don't like to see other people making money out of my work. Now, GPT-4 has given quite an interesting response and has raised a number of issues, and I would encourage you to go and read that because it's well worthwhile. So, to comment on the agent's response, GPT-4 raises some extremely valid concerns, and this is what I personally enjoy most about AI, the ability to interact and ideate, particularly in areas of complexity such as this one. The almost independent nature of the response can only cause you to pause and consider and then ask additional questions for clarity. Now, I'll be continuing this conversation with the agent, but the above is probably sufficient for the purposes of this video. So, in summary, this emerging area seems to present a minefield of challenges and potential scare tactics as people raise concerns along the way. At times, it can be difficult to separate the genuine concerns and questions from self-interest, though. So I'm keenly watching this topic, and an open mind will be essential to consider all sides of the debate. Also, because it's so new, critical thinking will be crucial to gain insight into some of the as yet unasked questions in the space. You need to sit back and say, what else could happen here? What else could be an issue? So what are your thoughts on the matter? How do you see some of the questions raised in this video? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear what you've got to say. Cheers.